Good morning, welcome. This is Angela Coulter, your consciousness transformation ascension guide, the originator of a practice called Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. This is a topic that, this week's topic is something that's come up, and I see it intermittently. I have a lot of questions about it. I've talked about it a lot over the years, and now more than ever, it's very important to have a discussion about it because there is like quite an exponentially growing number of individuals who are getting out there and really becoming prominent and being called to truly, be. I'm just pulling my thing up so I can see comments. So, prominent and coming to be, in the forefront of the spiritual world. And there's a lot. There's many. So there's not going to be one or a few. That's the whole thing. Is good morning, Gloria. There's all of us getting to that place of recognition of all of that within ourselves. So I'm gonna start with when I first left corporate, I went and did something completely different that I had never done before. I went into I had an organic herb nursery for a while, a commercial organic herb nursery, and I thought I knew it. I thought I knew what was going on. I had grown up, of course, conventional gardening, and then I had switched over into natural and organic stuff. And I thought, okay, I sort of have this, because I was already doing organic gardening. Well, then I, got a small greenhouse, then I got bigger greenhouses, then I had 4,500 square feet of greenhouse space, and it was quite an operation. And so I joined in this. It's not quite a co-op, but something like that. That was just starting the ground up on organics, and I had a lot of meetings and conversations with growers who had always done organics. And I'll never forget, there was this one man that I spoke to, and he asked me how things were going, and he asked me about my business, and he said, he asked me about my background with organics. He said, okay, so I'm going to tell you one thing that will make a huge difference in the long run. And he said, so when you're brought up with a conventional and you're used to a conventional gardening or growing, he said, and you change over to organics, he said the first thing that most do that's sort of a downfall, or not the way it sort of falls apart, is when you move over into organic gardening, you go over with the mindset that you had when you were in conventional gardening, he said, or growing. He said, so you tend to think, like, at first, you're going to think about things in the same way that you used to, like, oh, how do I control this? How do I eliminate it? Like, it's very reactive. And he said, eventually you will, he goes, if you last doing this, he goes, eventually you'll back away and realize that nature talks to you and tells you what's needed. And really what you're focusing on is balancing and providing the best environment for the plants to thrive, right? And he's like, so, and are they going to get disease? Are they going to get insects? Only if something's out of balance. And he said, so what you start to get to is more of a core of being of the whole, ecosystem that the plants live in. And I was like, yeah, right, at the beginning. And then the longer I went in this, so the first couple of years, that's exactly what I did. I went and I was just applying my conventional thoughts to organic growing. And then as I got more into it, and I got closer to the plants and listened to them more and started to really awaken to my communication with them. This is before my grand awakening, but I really was having a lot of, nonverbal communication with the plants. The longer I did that, the longer I started to shift into what that guy was talking about. It was like, oh, because I was always anxiety ridden. I was spending a ton of money on things to control the environment and a lot of energy and time and money and all that kind of stuff. And then when I stepped back and I was like, okay, well, what needs to be balanced? That's what started to come together of, okay, well, if this needs to be balanced, and it wouldn't be what it looked like. Okay, well, balance the pH here, or this is getting too much heat, or this is getting too much more, like, and things like that. And when we started to balance the environment, the problems started to go away. So the reason I'm telling you this is because in terms of the topic of what we're talking about today, it's spiritual egotism. What is the funny thing is, so many have condemned religion and said, oh, well, it's very egotistical, it's very power-based, all they're doing is trying to control you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then, I'm going off and I'm going to do my own spiritual stuff. And that's fine, and that's great. And in fact, that's great, because the thing is for us to get past needing to fit into boxes of an expectation, an expected, dictated series of beliefs and understandings and the way we act based on certain beliefs, right? That are dictated to us. So, many condemn religion because of that, except then they get into spirituality, and then what happens is it's very similar. The practices end up being very similar. So what happens in religion, right? And I don't want to, I'm not dissing religion, but this is where we've had a lot of discussion about egoic spiritualism, where you have the priest, or you have a hierarchy, right? You have the pastor, you have somebody who's the one who knows more than everybody else, because they've been trained, or they've had a calling to, stand in front of the congregation and talk about God and talk about connecting, whatever. And so people are used to, oh, well, I like this pastor, I don't like this pastor. I like this priest, I don't like this priest, da-da-da-da-da, and this priest so-and-so said this, priest so-and-so said this. It's the same thing. So it's the same thing across religions, though. Whether it was a yogi, or it was a priest, or a pastor, or a rabbi, it's the same kind of thing. And so we have this hierarchy, and that's all been based in ego of, there's a hierarchy of importance, right? And of knowledge that some have and some don't, things like that. With expectations on how long you have to go, what you have to do to get there. So as we've shifted into this whole period of spiritual awakening, this mass spiritual awakening, and we're seeing there's so much more than that, right? And we're saying, oh, well, that's so limiting, and I can connect to the divine and all that kind of stuff. Or I am, the next step is really to say, I am the divine. And then yet we look around and see a ton of spiritual practices, and then what do you see? You see priests, or not priests, but you know what I'm saying? You see somebody who's a figurehead. You see hierarchies and expectations. And by the way, some of them are so implicit we don't even realize that we have them. We have been in a male-dominated world for quite a while, right? So it's a very, very easy habit for many to start to look to men for the answer. And I'm not bashing anybody. This is just it is an observation of what we've been going through, right? And what I've been observing, what we observe. So I said early on, what's funny is when you watch, there are so many women coming to the forefront in spirituality, and they'll make this you can have different women that are holding the space and whatever, and they'll hold a certain kind of space where then where they have others that come together, and we're doing it in a different way than it's been done patriarchally. But anyway, what's interesting to see is some guy comes in. Most of the time it's they shave their head bald, they wear some robes or some funky clothes, and then they put in say some obtuse sayings, and they start quoting yogis with 400 letters to their names, and then all of a sudden everybody just swarms to them without even knowing anything, and they sort of give away their power. So, and that's just this is just another observation. So it's not just that, but then we have all this stuff about who knows more, right? Who's got the answer? Who's got the magic pill for me? And the key is on all of these teachings is that it's you who has the magic pill for you, for nobody else but you. we are getting called more and more to speak up and be authentic about our understandings and remembrances. That's what they are. But it's to do so in the way of holding the space that allows others around you to come into that for themselves. So number one, the first step is to look at like what you're following and saying, okay, are you putting this individual up on a pedestal? Now, it's interesting because I've originated a very advanced spiritual practice that I intuited that came into me almost 10 years ago now. And really, it's infinitely powerful. And one of the biggest things that I have really reinforced over and over again and talked about and reinforced and talked about and reinforced over and over again is this lack that there is no hierarchy. Here's the thing. I am here to really step into my divine self as God. I am God. Absolutely. To recognize that, to live that, to explore that, to express that. And I'm also here, and the other thing is to recognize everyone around me as exactly the same. So there is no hierarchy. There is no like, oh, you have this and this, because I don't feel and believe that everybody like that some people have knowledge and some people don't. Like, oh, well, you're special, you're this, and it's like, so yes, we're all special, and none of us are special. We have the very unique path of what we've embodied to express, yet we are all at the end of the day essentially infinitely the divine, because, and we've talked about that, the understandings and stuff like that, right? So it's actually that God is inside of us. We are God. I am God expressed as me, and you are God expressed as you. And what a beautiful bajillion faceted gemstone we create. And I've talked about that many times. So when you come from that perspective, it's a very deep habit to break. Working with people, and as the originator of the practice, I've had to consistently point it out when somebody's holding me on a pedestal, all that kind of stuff, and point out when they hold somebody else on the pedestal, because the thing is, we're all on the pedestal. All right, okay, yeah, okay, great, I'm happy to be on the pedestal, and we're all on the pedestal together. We can say it however we want. So when we take that into account, and then we talk about it and know it here, but then we'll say, oh, yeah, of course. But then they're like, oh, well, I'm going to this person so they can give me the answer. I'm going to this person so they can give me the answer. And that person's going to give me the answer. And instead of listening to their own. And I had a period of time where there were several practitioners in my prior Trinity Energy Progression came to me separately. They didn't even know the other ones had come to me. And they'd gone to some channeling event where I can't remember who the entity was that was being channeled. It was one of the ascended masters, and and so that individual translated what they understood and told all those individuals, oh, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. In every case, it was almost the exact opposite of what they had been guided to do with their own guidance. And then what did they do? They faltered, because they believed somewhere, they had a belief in there that the other individuals or the channelers or the entities coming in through the channelers had more knowledge than they did. But the thing is, that's them reflecting back to them. And I said to every single one of them, what if the test here was, do you listen to your guidance over everything else? Because that is the goal, right? Not to tell other people what to do, not to get other people to do something, not to get other people to awaken. The goal here is for us to awaken into ourselves, to step into our authenticity, to step into our true power. And Gloria says, when you hold someone on a pedestal, then you're giving her power. Exactly, because then you're saying, I am in lack, so therefore you're going to fulfill the lack that I believe I have. And then we go through all this stuff of it's sort of. So that's the first step. And then we have the next step, right? Which we have a lot of practices that are coming out. There are a lot of people coming out and saying that. But then they practice it differently, like, oh, well, I'm different. I have to be separate from the people I teach. I have to I have to keep a distance. I have to, like, all this kind of interesting stuff. also, or they have to like me, they have to approve of me, right? That's a power that we give away sometimes in a power position. That's the funny part, is somebody is only powerful like if they're doing it from the external point of view, if everybody else gives them power, right? But if you come from the internal point of view of the power comes from within me, then you don't have to depend on anyone giving you power because you already have it. You already let yourself have it. Okay, so from that perspective, that's like one big, piece of it. The other thing, though, that is very intrinsically like embedded in all of the spiritual talk that's going on is we have many out there who are, okay, so this is another thing, yeah. Many out there who are giving up the true journey of going within to remember their own divinity in the name of serving everyone else, right? Okay, so first of all, in higher consciousness, it is the opposite of that, because we are to step into ourselves first and foremost, to do our own work first and foremost, to exalt ourselves to that place of remembrance and realization above all else, because that is how we serve everyone around us. It's the clearer we get, the higher vibration we get, the more space of love that we hold, the higher vibration that we hold just existing here. And then we have to do nothing. And it also helps others to give themselves permission to do the same. So I'm not giving anybody something that they don't already have. I just help them remember how to access it. And so, and then what I talk about all the time is, well, my job is to kick you in the butt to make sure you use it. Anybody who works with me knows that. I'm like, okay, so what do you get? What does your guidance say? Like, have you done your work and all that kind of stuff? I might get an understanding, or actually usually I do have an understanding of the bigger picture when I'm working with somebody, but I'm not usually guided to share it. It's like it's helping them to come to the realization themselves, but we're so addicted to that magic pill, right? Thank you for saying that. Yes, stepping into ourselves, right? Thank you. And it's like we're so addicted to looking for the magic pill outside of us. We're so addicted to thinking we have this lack within us, right? That we so easily like just attract to others who tell us. And here's the thing: if somebody stands there and says, "Hey, I've got your magic pill," sure do. Come on over here. Pay me $3,000. I'll give you that magic pill. Oh wait. Okay, so here's the beginning of your magic pill. That was a $3. Here's another. But I mean, not always money, but it could be time, could be energy, could be anything like that. But this is what's going on. If there is something that implies, even subconsciously, some sort of dependency for something to happen, then that is a hierarchy, and that is spiritual egotism in the way of that, especially if that individual takes it. But it's also actually from the individual that says, I have to give it. So let me talk about egotism. So when I use the word egotism, I'm talking about the, my understanding is the ego's job originally was to explore separation, to explore exclusion and identity and separation, which then created darkness and all this other kind of stuff. And so it's not that it's bad, it's just that's what its job has been. So it's really, really in this habit. And then we have this, if we have an identity, then we have an ego, no matter what it is. So it's not just here in the 3D. That's not the only place the ego exists. Up in the higher consciousness levels of higher consciousness, as long as there's an individual identity, there's an ego of some sort of separation. It might be different, but it still exists. So that's where, when we talk about going inside and going and training yourself, retraining yourself into the habit of listening to your own guidance over everything else. Gloria says, time to run the other way. Right, when they say, yeah, you have to come here, there's more, and you have to depend on me. However, it doesn't take much because of that habit of, let me, and it's done. Not always, and I want to say it's done It's done both in the masculine and feminine sense, right? So in the masculine energy, you have the, oh, come listen to me. I have the answers for you. I will tell you what to do, right? And then you have, from the feminine energy kind of thing, you have the, oh, come, let me nurture you. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it with you. Let me help you take care of that. And that's what we fall into, right? Oh, well, yeah, she'll take care of it for me. Or he's going to tell me what to do. Those are both egoic perceptions. And it's also disempowering and giving away our power in terms of saying, well, that means that you have an answer that I don't, right? So truly what our spiritual... So you know, I saw something the other day where literally somebody out there is like, there are so many out there, they're like, oh, well, everybody else is stupid, and there's so many who are just asleep, and they're sheep. I mean, and really denigrating others because they don't have the same perspective or same understandings. And I'm like, well, that's ego right there. How do you not see that ego within yourself? Because as soon as you start judging others, judging comes from the ego. Judging is a separation and exclusionary energy because it creates hierarchy, right? Have and have not, good and bad, that kind of stuff. And that's all from the ego, right? So that's where the egotism is what I'm talking about comes from. So if you have somebody standing there saying, well, this is good and this is bad and you should do this and you shouldn't do that, that's all ego based. So you could have the best intentions in the world, but if you're still falling into that habit, that's how you're presenting yourself as, well, I'm going to tell you that this is good and this is bad. And you can choose. But see, here's the funny thing. It's under the guise of you can choose what you want. But this is bad. These people are bad. Or these people are losers because they're not awake. And that is the old way. So that's like I was talking about the story in the beginning. That's the old way of gardening. That's the old way of living. It's the egotistical way of hierarchy and exclusion. And, oh, you're great as long as you follow the same understandings that I do. I tell people all the time, individuals that I work with, others that I know, I have my understandings and I am very firm in my beliefs and my own guidance. And yes, I am so appreciative of other reflections and different facets that come to me and other beliefs and other practices and everything else that are all very similar, and they always complement, well, not always, but most of the ones that come into my purview compliment. And I respect that. I'm like, oh, well, look at that. That's beautiful. I call it different flavors of ice cream, but it's all ice cream, right? But I don't spend my time judging others who don't have the same understandings. I don't judge something or someone as bad or good, because everything that exists has a purpose and a reflection for the individual and the individuals that are incorporated in that particular set of lessons. So the key is for us to, in moving into this new phase and moving into this new level of awakening and realization, is to let go of the judgment and embrace everyone. I mean, when people talk about, oh, well, you know, be love, right? We say that and we throw that out like, you know, yesterday's dishwater, but that's an old saying. But the truth is, it's like, what was I even saying? I just totally lost my train of thought. I can't remember where I was. All right, I'll back up 2 steps. So the understandings of when you have disagreements, when you have others, the reason is, you know, and I've talked about this, I was talking about this Monday, and I always have at least one reference on my Thursday on this Living the Shift podcast. On my Monday podcast with Sarah Sigavignoni on Ascended World, where we were talking about, oh wow, I'm totally out there with this morning. It's just having a hard time keeping focused. Ooh. All right, I'll come back to that in a minute too. So when we are going through this, when we're going through this whole shifting, right? We're coming to embrace our divinity. We're coming into, I know that's what I was saying. Oh, it was on something else we did. the saying, and I posted this earlier this week, is there are many paths up the mountain, but at the top we still see the same bright moon, right? That's the truth, right? That's the truth. 7 point whatever billion people on this planet. There are 7 point whatever billion paths to the mountain, to the top of the mountain. There's 7 point whatever billion ways to get there. There's not 1 or 2 or 5 or 10. There is every single facet that we have created as the divine has its own journey to remembering back to its divinity, right? And so we might see things very differently. I could not be able to see how what maybe you believe, it connects into what I believe. And yet, from a higher perspective, it doesn't matter because that's your journey and this is mine. And we all get there because there is no time, by the way, no matter how long it takes time-wise. We all get there. It's all instantaneous. It's happened. It is happening. It has happened. It's going to happen simultaneously. So when we get to that point of view, then you sort of let go of the need to judge and the need to exclude and condescend and tell somebody that they're less than because of this particular journey that they're on. That's the thing that keeps us from moving forward. Is we'll say, oh well, I'm right, and if you don't follow me and you don't follow what I believe, then you're wrong. Oh, I'm so divine and I'm so awakened. And I literally saw someone out there that said, I am the most awakened person on this planet. And I was like, wow. And I was like, okay, what does it matter? And most is ego because it's comparative, right? Hierarchy, most and least and more and less. So I'm like, okay, well, that just right there is totally egoic. So that would say no. I would say no, that's probably not the case, but it's part of your journey and that's fine. I didn't answer that because it's not for me to answer. It's for them to recognize within themselves, right? And so it's like, okay, well, every time we say I am the most, I am the best, I am the thing that we're best at is being ourselves. Because that's what we're here to be, right? And yet we also are all these facets. It's just that we've put all these partitions in to forget, and it's for us to come together and remember that. And the first steps to remembering is appreciating and honoring each other's journeys as unique and individual and perfect as they are, and to say, okay, well, and this is, so the way I've been guided to work with others, and probably, hasn't gotten me to, millions of people's and, following whatever yet, is the fact that it's like I always say, this is my understanding, take it or leave it. And you can resonate with this or you cannot. And then sometimes, we have conversations that are great conversations that are to help us reflect back to ourselves something that we might be missing, or a little piece or a little nugget. We all get nuggets from each other of remembrance, of helping ourselves to remember. And it's not getting it from somebody that we don't have. It's reminding ourselves of something we do. So when we start coming to things from that perspective of saying, I'm starting already perfect, I'm starting already infinite and divine, I'm already there, and so are you, and I honor my own journey as this expression of the divine, as I'm honoring yours, there's no way for me to not to do that, then it becomes so much easier and so much less energy to proving who's right and who's wrong, who's good and who's bad. I see so many posts out there like, this person's pure evil. I mean, politicians and whatever, yada, yada, yada. And so it's so much energy. And the key is not to judge that. It's to step back and away from it to say, oh, wow, look at how much energy I'm putting to creating that hierarchy, to perpetuating that exclusion by having this kind of egoic representation. It's time for us to change the whole way we do stuff, not just change the name of it. Gloria says, I love getting my daily nuggets. Yeah, nuggets are great. I love the nuggets. But, it's time for us to change the whole way of expression not just change like the title and saying it's, this that's, controlling this and they're bad, so I'm good, but I'm going to do the same thing. That's what's going on in our whole political realm. Oh, well, this person's bad, but I'm good, and so, but I'm going to do this. That's going to be the same thing, just in a different name. That's what's going on, and people fall for it. We're so used to being in the habit of believing others when they say, oh, well, I'm going to do this, because then they look at what I call the shiny. Oh, look at the shiny over here. You don't need to look at this. Where we're at is, nope, it's time for us to look at the whole picture. And the whole picture comes inside here, from inside here. Not from what we see or experience externally. It's all from what's inside. And so when we do that, truly, there's nothing to take away from others. There's nothing to create as a hierarchy. There's nothing to, I see it's a little, and I don't want to say dangerous because that's an ego word. It's a little in the shadow of repeating the same thing we've done many times, which is fall into the guise of the ego, fall into the guise of awakening and consciousness through the guise of awakening and consciousness through the hidden ego. And it's for us individually. It's up to us. So it's not to blame any individual that, gains all these followers and, people are doing stuff for them and in their name and everything else. Like, oh, we've done that so many times. Let's stop. Don't do anything in anybody else's name. You do everything for your own, presence, in your own consciousness and realization and recognition that there is nothing to learn, only to remember. And I am passionate about this, because this is the key that changes everything, is for us to come to that within ourselves, so that we don't need, or we can honor each other's journey and be like, oh, that's fabulous. I love how you've come to that within yourself. And I have my own. Thank you. And it's not saying that we don't come together. It is that we do come together, but we come together in that oneness and wholeness in the recognition of that divinity. And when we come together from that energy, there's so much less pull. There's so much less freneticism. I was watching something going on. It's like, oh, well, there are these different groups popping up. And then it's like, oh, well, I want to start one here and I've got to start one here. And it's almost like, oh, I've got to be a part of this. I've got to be a part of this. Breathe. You are what you are. You're here to be that divine expression that you are. And so the biggest job that we have is the responsibility of stepping into ourselves and our true authenticity and our true power, and holding that space that gives everyone else the permission to do the same. And just think of how much less energy we put to having to prove ourselves, having to, and here's the thing, a lot of times people, then what we have is the whole, and people call it being sheeple or whatever, and that's judgmental, but that's where we get into this whole mob mentality thing, right? It's because, oh, well, this person is this leader and we're gonna, give our power away to this leader who has more whatever than us. Or I believe I'm going to become enlightened or a special one because I follow this person, and I've got to hurry up and I've got to conform to do everything they expect, and I'm going to give up all of my own guidance, and I'm going to give up what's inside of me to do that. That's just shifting from conventional to organic without changing the whole basis of how we do it, like I was talking about in the beginning. It is so important for us to come to the place of saying, okay, I love and honor this person for what they present here and what they embody here and what they express here. And instead of saying, well, I'm going to give myself away to them, it's to say, okay, well, in my perfect divine expression, how do we mingle? How do we connect? How do we get even bigger? And then it becomes this huge partnership of all of us in the awakening, right? It becomes this, it's a huge partnership. We all come to it at the same level, though. It's not like, oh, this person's better than this person, or I'm going to follow this person, or I'm going to gleam onto this person, or glam onto what they're doing. It's, we are all coming to the table with our amazing, amazing representations and expressions. I did get very clearly not too long ago that, basically I kept on asking, well, what's really my purpose? I've been doing this professionally for like a decade now. You would think that I would know. But I keep on asking that because it changes. You know what? By the way we fulfill a purpose, we have another one that we've chosen for ourselves, right? So I'm like, okay, so what is this? And I want clarity on this. And basically, I got is to be the expression, to be the language of the divine, to be the expression of the divine that I came here to be. And that's all that is. And so I know what that is in every cell of my being, but we're so used to having to say, okay, will people like this? Will this serve others? Will this serve the planet? Will this do this? Whatever. Of course it will, because as soon as we align with that and we are that, then we hit this resonance, that frequency that just blows us away, blows away all the junk that's been not serving us. It's the Tower card and the Tarot deck. And lets it all crumble so that we can move away and build in this realization from a completely different place. So that is your home play for this week. Go and look at, like, not only who you're following, right? Who are you following that you believe is, taking your power from you? And you don't usually believe it. Who do you follow that you believe that you wouldn't be able to proceed without? And then also look within yourself and say, who am I projecting myself to be and telling others that they have to do the same? Where am I saying something is good or bad and judging it? and how do I shift that within myself so that I can accept the different flavors of ice cream that are there? Because even somebody who presents as the worst person ever, for whatever reason, in judgment, has a very, usually the more triggering they are, the bigger the lesson there is for you to reflect back, because you're not looking at it within yourself. And that's individually and collectively. But that's, discussions on other days. But look at that this week. Just take a look at what is reflecting back to you and who you are projecting yourself as, and with the implication that others aren't, that you're better, that you're more aware, or that you're more awake, or that you're more spiritual, or that you are more anything. And on the other side, who do you believe is more than you that you don't have the same abilities for, or knowledge or whatever. And it's not that you don't have the same knowledge, that you don't have to learn anything. It's just that, different people are at different places of recognition and realization, because that's just part of the journey, the individual journeys, right? And it's not that we don't have the knowledge and that you have to learn. It's something for us to remember and to rehabituate ourselves into allowing within our realities on every moment kind of basis. So, another small topic, right? So, thank you for joining me. Have a great week. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter signing off on this week's Living the Shift.